Up. Starting it up. Let's see who winds up coming in earliest and soonest. If anybody even cares about being hybrid. I guess, shouldn't we ask the question, who drives a hybrid?
Yeah, why not? That's a good icebreaker.
There you go. So we'll get that going. Nobody's showing up yet. Hopefully somebody shows up. We'll get started in a minute. Here we go. Vikas. Vikas is the first one in. Welcome, Vikas. We'll get started in a few minutes. Get you cooking. I want to try this in the Q&A. I can't do it. I can't do my own cues. Okay, can't do it. We have Akil. Harold. I know Harold.
I've heard of him.
Heard of him. Heard of that guy. So,
once or twice.
What's that?
Once or twice.
Once or twice, yeah. So welcome everybody. We'll get cooking in just a minute. Start out a little. So the question is, who drives a hybrid and who refuses to drive a hybrid and doesn't want to ever be hybrid or electric? Because you got electric now, you got electric and you got hybrid and you got gas, right? So what do you drive, Matt?
I have a hybrid.
You have a hybrid?
I do.
Get out of here. So what hybrid do you have?
The Lexus ES 300.
Nice.
Yeah.
So gas, hybrid, or all electric is the question. So we got one. Matt's got a hybrid. What do you drive, Doug?
All gas all the time.
All gas all the time.
But nothing against hybrid.
Anti-hybrid. He's anti-hybrid.
No, I'm not anti-hybrid. I just don't have one.
The one thing I'm afraid of with hybrids is that I've been told my whole life that if that one master battery thing goes up, you might as well buy another car or something, because they used to be $12,000, $15,000 or something out of warranty for that battery that transfers
Crazy,
all the
right?
information. Yeah, so that's
Crazy.
scary.
All right. So the question is, where are you from and what do you drive? Is it gas, hybrid, or all electric? So that's the question. Put that in the chat. And some people might have multiples, right? Rich people like Akil probably has 5 or 6 Lambos and all that kind of thing, right, Akil? And we got 2 Brents here, so we got somebody's impersonating somebody. So Lacey, Jeep manual, love it, Vikas. Lacey's gas. Harold drives a hybrid as well.
Look at that.
That's right. So I love the Jeep idea. We don't have a Jeep, but we've talked about getting a Jeep. So I'm from Woodstock, Maryland, and everything we have is gas. So that's what we got. So where are you from and what do you drive? Gas, hybrid, or all electric? Or maybe you don't drive anything and you do public transportation. I don't know. And then you have to figure out, because some of those are actually natural gas. So what do you do with that? So there you go. We'll get started in a minute. But today's icebreaker is, where are you from? Vikas from Maryland, DC area, and he has a Jeep. I like Jeeps, just saying. So where are you from and what do you drive? Whether it's gas, hybrid, or all electric. So Harold's going EV next year. That's what I hear. A lot of folks doing the EV thing. Got some cool cars coming out with EV, gotta say. Right? Used to be problematic. One of the guys that works with me though, and Akil says, doesn't have a car. My next car will be EV from Washington, DC. Fantastic, Akil. Welcome, welcome. So that's the question for the day. Where are you from and what do you drive? Gas, hybrid, or all electric? Because that's where we're headed, I think, right? I think, did we see that a lot of the folks are all going all electric, right? So where are you out of, Doug?
Off in the States, Chicago. Chicago area, yep.
Chicago area. Love it. Love it. How long have you lived up there?
Oh, almost 30 years.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've lived here most of my life. Todd Jones from DC and driving gas. That's the question for today. Where are you from and what are you driving? Gas, hybrid, or electric? Got a couple hybrids, couple gas folks, and then we'll get cooking. We'll go ahead and get cooking here. Welcome to the hybridization of everything. So even if you're driving gas or you're driving a hybrid, everything is going hybrid. That's what I hear, Douglas. Is that true?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. We're pretty much getting there, I think. So we'll go ahead and get you started. We're glad that you guys decided to join us. We have folks from all over the place in this interagency briefing. NRC, USPTO, Census, EPA, Commerce, Ed, USDA, HHS, Customs. We love everybody. Appreciate you guys joining us. And you're not going to believe this, Douglas, but this event is not affiliated or endorsed by GSA or any other agency. And we do this so that you all can participate and have and join in the dialogue. But it's not an endorsement to purchase from anybody. If you'd like to participate, you can. And we will make sure that you can do that. You can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can pop it in the Q&A. We love the dialogue. And if you have something that you don't want everybody and the mother to see, send it to matt.sweet, even though that has 2 T's. It's sweet at divine.com, and you can reach out to him there. So here's what we got so far, Doug. Best briefing ever if adaptive is explained. So that'll be the best briefing ever for Barb from education if you just define what adaptive is. Bruce, if you learn anything new, it'll be the best ever. Cecilia's got one. If the concept of fusion teams were included. Wow. Well, I don't even know what that means. Do you know what that means, Doug? Hopefully you do.
Well, I'm talking about hybrid teams, and I think probably fusion teams is probably the same thing. But
there we go. If not, Cecilia, throw something at Doug and make him answer the question.
Yeah.
Jennifer says that you can explain it to someone easily. So we're going to make it so that it's transferable. Hopefully that does. Catherine from NRC, it provides concise and knowledgeable information. Concise, knowledgeable, Douglas. That's
all
what
right.
we're saying. Jamie from USDA received information that will benefit the office and division I work in. Hopefully you will, Jamie. Eileen from HUD, you adapted to the challenges. Well, I'm not sure what Eileen is going to throw at us, but we're going to adapt. That's all I know. Derek from Census, the slide decks to review a later date. How about that? How about I pop that into the chat? Let's see if I do still have it. There it is. Boom. You can download that right there, Derek. So you can review the slides at a later date. And Teresa, is Teresa here? We'll find out if Teresa is here. So Zoom is working. It's the best briefing for Teresa ever, just because the Zoom actually worked. So we appreciate you joining us. All right, so here you go, Doug. Please address. We're looking at the bigger picture and addressing from all angles. Is LCA an integral part of this effort? That sounds detailed. If we don't answer that right here, how would you say Sod? I'm sorry if I'm messing that up. So, but we'll make sure we get the information that you asked for. Catherine, in case of person presence in the office may be made justified post-pandemic. That's right. Should we be together? Should we be getting together? Is hybrid going to be forever? What do you think about that, Doug? We're going to answer a little bit of that, maybe?
We are.
Bruce, enterprise software as cloud service for radiation oncology. Interesting. Sounds like Bruce does something with radiation oncology. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can adapt to that, right? And Charlotte.
Yeah, that was pretty specific, and maybe that might be a follow-up conversation.
That might be. We might have to make sure we get that for you. From U.S. Patent Trademark, how to work effectively in hybrid environments and what the future of hybrid work. Love that. Appreciate that very much. And we'll do our best to answer those, right, Doug?
Yes, sir.
All right. So why did you decide to join us here? So, choose as many as you want, but are you on the hot seat for a hybrid project? You need to get your head around this hybrid technology things. And are you working in a hybrid workplace? I think we all are right now, right? So you want to be part of the hybrid dialogue, or your boss made you come. And if this is the first time you ever been to a Gov brief, let us know. But if you have been here before, welcome back. We love having you guys join us today. And while they're filling that out, we have Matt Sweet, as I mentioned earlier. He is with Divine. Tell us a little bit about Divine and how you guys operate and what you guys accomplish for folks in the federal space.
Sure, Dave. Thanks. And I want to thank everybody and say good afternoon. Thank you for attending. I know that everyone's time is very important, and we're just glad that you took an hour of your day to share with us. So Divine Integration was founded in 2002 with the core purpose of positively impacting lives one interaction at a time. And these people include, our clients, of course, but our coworkers and other key stakeholders. We specialize in multiple areas, but I'll focus on enterprise architecture, of course, as we're doing today, Salesforce implementation and development, as well as custom software development in all spheres, most notably the MS stack, and workforce solutions. We do all these things for our clients with an attitude of providing these services with excellence, with grace.
Love it.
And if you have any questions, please, you saw my information a couple slides ago, so please reach out at any time and we can have a follow-on conversation.
And there'll be opportunity to do that specifically for everybody. We want to make sure you get what you need for your agency, because everybody wants to be part of the dialogue and they want to make sure that they get their questions answered. We want to make sure that happens. You guys were founded in 2002, and just so everybody knows, they're small business as well as 8A certified. So with that, I'm going to end this poll and we're going to share this out. Let's see where we are. A lot of folks trying to get their head around the technology part there, Doug. How about the hybrid workplace? Got a couple people there. They want to be part. Boss made me come. A couple Weisenheimers. We love the Weisenheimers. And about almost half and half about people that are there. Awesome. We appreciate you that have been here before. So we're going to ask the next one. Where are you and what's happening in your hybrid space in your agency? What kind of hybrid stuff is going on? And if you take a look at is it hybrid architecture? How about the work environment or processes? And I didn't even know that there was such a thing as hybrid work processes or hybrid processes. So Doug, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. And let us know if it's actually working, because sometimes it works okay and sometimes not so much, which is why we're going to talk a little bit about architecture, right? The IT architecture.
We are.
So we'll make sure we get that happening for everybody. Let us know where you are in the space. We'll do our best to be able to get you answers and engage you in where you are. And we are going to get engaged in federal initiatives. You're going to talk about that, right, Doug?
Yes, sir.
And we do hear hybrid like everywhere now, not just where we're driving. We got people that are still in the middle. Some people gas, some people EV, some people doing the hybrid, right? So we have hybrid everything. We do have some agency challenges. That's why we're all here trying to fix problems and do our best to be able to solve things for the agencies. And then we'll look at some case studies and how to be a dynamic agency. That'd be awesome, right? Mm-hmm. And talk about what's next. Let's see who we got here. We got only 47%. Come on, we can do it. You're doing hybrid IT, work environment, hybrid processes, and how is it working for you? So we'll give you another 5, 4, 3, 2, and there you go. So this is what we got, guys. So a lot of folks here dealing with the hybrid workplace, it looks like. So and that involves IT, right? Everything does, right, Douglas?
It does.
So fantastic. So take us into it, Doug. Tell us about the hybridization of everything and where are you getting this concept from?
All right. So very good. So first of all, I'd like to address a registrant question. Someone asked, can you just define adaptive? And how do we mean it here? So great icebreaker question there, Dave, asking about what kind of cars we drive. A hybrid vehicle is an adaptive vehicle. The vehicle does different things depending on the conditions that you're in. If you're going fast on the highway, it's got to run that gas motor. If you're just tooling around town from stoplight to stoplight and crosswalk to crosswalk, it runs the electric motor. And that's how we mean adaptive in this situation, depending on the external conditions. Now, it doesn't, in the technology space, we don't change as fast as a hybrid car does from one technology to the other. But that's what we're talking about here. And it's not a new conversation at all. The hybridization of everything was actually the title of an article in Fast Company over 30 years ago. And at that time, they said the old organizations, the organizing principle was specialization, and the new organizations, it's hybridization. And they talked about interdepartmental meetings and cross-functional teams and integrated systems, and now we would say even hybrid systems. And but one of the things that they really wanted to drive home in this article was that the hybridization principle is not just about the way we work and the stuff we work with, but it's who we are. People are becoming the hybrid in hybrid roles and having multiple responsibilities, especially in a matrix organization when you've got a dotted line to Dave and a solid line to Matt and another dotted line to somebody else. And the so go ahead.
So when we think about what's happening within the agencies, there's a lot of different initiatives that have been coming down on folks in the hybrid IT space. So if we kind of look at the biggest one is dealing with the whole concept of going to the cloud, right? So they're pushing stuff to the cloud. Take us through some of the biggest initiatives that we've seen in the IT world for this.
Sure. Well, going back to 2011, the Office of the Federal CIO issued a report called Federal Cloud Computing Strategy in 2011. At that time, it talked about cloud first, a preference for cloud as much as possible. And that wasn't necessarily a hybrid philosophy. It was saying get off the systems that you're hosting yourselves and having to manage that infrastructure and worry about the power and the lights and the air conditioning and all that stuff, and put it in the cloud where somebody else worries about that and you pay them for it. But the whole point at that time, really the salient argument in that report was that the cloud computing holds, as it says here, tremendous potential, I'll slow down on this, to deliver public value by increasing operational efficiency and responding faster to constituent needs. That's a theme that recurs over and over and over again. There's a report 8 years later, says basically the same thing. We're here to deliver public value with operational efficiency and responding faster to constituent needs.
So I happened to had gotten together with Steve Van Rokel as this was rolling out, and several different times. And I always liked the concept of it, but then they ran into some issues, right? Where it wasn't operating exactly what we thought. We couldn't just throw everything up there, which turned into this next part, which is cloud smart, right? This is a little bit more recent, right, Doug?
Exactly right. So fast forward 8 years to 2019, and cloud smart takes the place of cloud first. And the idea is to use cloud computing as effectively as possible, addressing inefficiencies so you can, because the efficiencies negatively affect your ability to serve the public. And but cloud computing will play a major part, but it's not necessarily everything cloud. It's cloud smart, as you say. And so when you're not all of one thing, you're a hybrid. You're a little bit of this and a little bit of that, or a little bit of this and a lot of that. But again, the recurring theme: serve the public, addressing inefficiencies, and improving service delivery.
And that didn't change. That's what I find interesting is overall the objective still stays the same. And whether you're talking with back with Steve or Tony Scott or any of the current CIOs, this is what they're up against. And this has led GSA to the whole concept of the hybrid cloud and what it means, and multi-cloud, because the cloud's got to talk to each other now. And now we created a new kind of monster, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And so 2 years after the cloud smart guidance, and people are starting to understand what cloud, multi-cloud, and hybrid cloud means, such that GSA can come out with this cloud architecture guidance and just provide guidance and say, now we're not about everything cloud. Sometimes we're hybrid cloud, sometimes we're multi-cloud, and there are trade-offs and relative benefits, and those trade-offs and relative benefits have to do with cost effectiveness and manageability and performance and reliability, security and privacy. And by the way, in the security area, this is one area where in some cases you stay out of the cloud completely, because that on-premises solution is still the most secure. And when you can manage it inside your physical four walls, especially, for example, a security system for physical security, You don't want that exposed to the outside world, so people can potentially hack and see all your security cameras. We've heard about that before.
Yep. And there's some things that are never going to go there. And I think you're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, right?
Yeah. Well, that was one example I was thinking of, was like your physical security systems.
Yeah.
You need to keep those inside the four walls, generally speaking.
And that's what gets us to this. There's going to be considerations for the cloud, and then for where it's not going to work, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've gone from prescriptive cloud first to prescriptive cloud smart to here's some guidance. You're going to have your own considerations to figure out which is best for you.
And we will take that guidance and we're going to pop that into the handouts. We'll make sure everybody gets copies of that guidance as well from the GSA.
Yep. And actually, there's a link for that in the last slide, the references.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Even faster. It's already there.
Now, lest we forget that cloud is not the whole of enterprise architecture. The Council of Federal CIOs have priorities. If you go to cio.gov, it's right there on the landing page. And they talk about these 5 different things, cloud being one of them. But the way I look at the enterprise architecture is it's not just the technology, it's also your workforce and your data. And how do you manage all that? That's all part of the managing the enterprise and having an architecture to do that and make it secure, protect your networks and your data, and achieve the mission.
So how many folks out there are operating this way? All these are part of their daily life, right? And with including in the IT workforce, now it's actually, because of the connectivity problems, it's all the workforce, right?
Exactly.
So
you'll hear me use the phrase holistic thinking. And if you're not thinking about all these things, then you might be missing one of them. And all these things are part of our lives. And if you dive deeper on that technology business management, that refers to the cost and the life cycle of the assets, and a common taxonomy across all the agencies, or at least all the domains within an agency, about how do we talk about technology. When we say systems, do we mean the applications and the infrastructure, or do we mean just the applications, just the solutions? And so in that TBM space, there's suggested vocabulary for all these things too.
Awesome. And the real question is hybrid everything, is we go to cloud. Well, I'm not sure about that, and then maybe it's not for everybody or everything, right?
Right.
Exactly. And we're having the workforce conversations, which pulls in HR now as to how we manage the workforce place and how all that works. So it all comes from trying to do your deliverables, right? As an agency, or even in your job function, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. So before we go one more slide, I want to emphasize this again. This is the imperative that we saw in every single set of guidance: deliver public value, increase efficiency, and respond faster. So hybrid everything, first of all, materializes the idea that one size does not fit all. And that was what the GSA guidance was saying, in a sense, that one size does not fit all. And here's how you figure out what size is best for you. But hybrid everything is both a preference for adaptive architecture, and it's also a consequence of responding to these imperatives. There's the consequence of designing for efficiency and responsiveness. All right, so a lot of times when we talk about hybrid in the IT space, we think of some very specific things, and we've been talking about hybrid cloud for years. So very commonly when people say hybrid IT or hybrid technology, first thing I think of is clouds. I mean, some of our stuff is on premises and some of it's in the cloud. That's the most common and at this point traditional. Can you have a tradition that's only 12 years long? Probably can. Way of thinking about the cloud and thinking about hybrid technology. Today, it's not just on premises or in a public or private cloud. It's also additional cloud native solutions, meaning private cloud or a SaaS solution. And there I'm thinking about, all the off-the-shelf packages that you can just plug in, and all you need is a web browser and you're ready to go. A web browser and an account.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do
And
you think? Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I was just going to say, and likewise, there's solutions that are built just for the cloud. And that's what I call hybrid native solutions. And they're built for this multi-cloud infrastructure. The tools that help you manage all that and help you move information between your on-prem and your cloud. And those are built for a hybrid.
And you also have the hybrid devices, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. And then I want to come back to hybrid information processing.
Okay.
So hybrid devices, just recognizing the fact that all IT devices are by definition digital, right? There's nothing you can plug in that's not digital these days, but all the world is analog. So I don't have a whole lot more to say about this, except I guess even your hybrid car is a hybrid device in that sense.
We're kind of a hybrid device. We're kind of semi-cyborgs with everything we walk around and carry these days, right?
Yep.
We're kind of turned into hybrid people.
Yeah. Well, and your physical sensors too, if you're talking about physical security or climate, climate and comfort management. They're sensing the real world in analog terms and converting it into digital. But one of the things I want to come back to, and I don't want to miss this point, is hybrid information processing. Traditionally, your software has what we call deterministic algorithms. That is, 2 and 2 always equals 4. And there's a traditional business rule that says that when it's 4, do this, and if it's 6, do something else. So the questions are predetermined and baked into the software. But today, we're seeing more and more applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is about letting the software identify patterns and identify exceptions and suggesting new questions that are not deterministic, that we don't know in advance when we write the code. So
that's that whole AI thing, right?
Yes. But those two things will live side by side forever, because we'll always be doing accounts payable, and accounts payable is very deterministic. There's not a lot of need for identifying patterns, and you get an invoice, you pay it.
I like what you say here with the hybrid solutions, with the benefits of taking the different technologies and mission specific solutions. I think that everybody falls into that place with those agencies.
Yeah.
Let's talk about roles. I love what you have here too. Explain what you mean about roles.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the matrixed organizations where people might have a different set of responsibilities or that they combine into their daily lives, or they're on these cross-functional teams. More and more, you have what we call a hybrid role. So a generation ago or more, organizations typically assigned one role to one person, and people could wrap their whole identity around their role at work. And that's a lot fuzzier these days. Some of it has to do with the hybrid technology, some of it has to do with the management theory of matrix organizations, and some of it has to do with hybrid workspace, and just some practical realities that I guess the shorthand here is everybody's wearing more than one hat these days.
That's
and when you're wearing more than one hat, that's a hybrid role. We can be fancy and say hybrid role, or we can be we can be friends and call it wearing more than one hat.
Multitask, unite, right? That's what
not only multitasking, but different types of tasks.
Different roles. Yeah, where you're getting pulled in multiple directions now.
Yeah. And jumping to the third point there, that's actually good. As long as you don't have people bouncing around so much that they can't keep track.
Yeah.
Hybrid roles actually benefit the organization because they increase productivity, but they also can increase employee morale through a thing that HR people know as task diversity or job diversity.
And there's also like cross pollination for different roles so that you can cover for people while they're gone as well. It makes it better.
For succession planning, for coverage when they're gone. Exactly right. Yeah.
Love all those. So who are the types that thrive in this role? Some people just don't dig it very much, but
well, the people who really, I think everybody can survive in them.
I agree.
And do well, but that's not quite the same as thriving. So the ones who thrive are fast learners, and they're comfortable working with little guidance because they they, like I say, they may have multiple reporting relationships, and you've got to be able to communicate well. You have to be curious, and you have to be personally adaptable and technology friendly and team friendly and holistic thinkers. Because if you're thinking about if you're thinking about a technology problem in the morning and an HR problem in the afternoon, you have to start thinking about how those two things interact with each other in a larger way.
Yeah. And I think your concept, you mentioned this earlier, you're going to be talking about holistic thinking. I think that's all part of it. And if you have the ability to just back up a little bit and take a look at the whole environment, and you can see how these pieces play, always a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's talk about enterprise architecture, because you're talking about some concepts and people and the skills and all those. So tell us about this part.
Well, yeah, and what something you said a moment ago is a perfect segue into this, is that enterprise architecture in particular benefits from holistic thinking, because if you're in primarily a business role or an operational role, let's call it that, but you have some hybrid responsibilities, you can help drive the technology architecture decisions. If you're primarily in a technological role, and you're thinking about hybrid architecture or really whatever the next solution is, whether it's hybrid or something else, thinking holistically there means that you remain focused on the organization's mission. You know what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. And those are just a couple of examples of relatively narrow examples, but those are examples of holistic thinking and how that supports the enterprise architecture function. Because the enterprise architecture function, at the end of the day, the mission is to apply these holistic technology concepts to enabling the organization, the agency, to achieve its mission.
As you're talking about this and you think about the skill sets of different folks, some folks have the ability to do that a little better than others and be a little bit more dynamic. I know you're going to talk about that as well. What does a hybrid team look like to you?
Well, to me, first of all, it's elastic, which means that it might be 6 people working on that hybrid team today, and might be 12 tomorrow, might be back to 6 a week from Tuesday. They're not necessarily fixed in their composition. They're cross-functional, meaning that you might have an HR person or whoever owns the business process that you're trying to improve in the agency, the HR person or the accounts payable person. They're on there sitting next to the technology person or across the table from them. They perform multiple organizational functions, which means that they're looking after the technology. They're also looking after getting people paid if you're in the payroll department, or you're looking after the benefits recipients if you're in one of those agencies. You operate on a matrix. Well, if you have cross-functional people coming from different departments, they've obviously got different reporting lines, as we mentioned before, dotted lines and solid lines. And more, what I'm seeing is communities of practice. That is, this cross-functional team gathers around a particular problem or a solution of problem, a set of problems, or even a long-lasting discipline like enterprise architecture, and works on that as a community rather than a hierarchical model with somebody who sets down a lot of rules and has other people fill in the blanks. Instead of a head giving you blanks to fill in, we give you boundaries and freedom within those boundaries, and you solve the problems as a community.
So you mentioned there's a couple different things, because the traditionally agencies have that hierarchical design and function, defined business roles. So some of this is going to create some changes and potential tension there. But I like what you said, because sometimes, even though it may be a real deliverable from an IT function, it may be driven by somebody in HR, right? So whoever owns that process becomes part of that. And then the concept of using a more flattened kind of, is that what you're saying? Is more flattened out and collaborative, right? Is that what you're thinking?
Exactly right. And it's very key to have that HR person owning that HR process that's enabled by the HR technology.
Yeah. And that goes to your silos, right? And that's one of the challenges a lot of folks, anybody that's done work in the government, have been in the government for a while, you see the silos develop, and then there's some tension sometimes of breaking those silos down, isn't it?
Yep. And I might be getting out of my lane here just a little bit, but if we go back all the way back to that first set of cloud guidance, there was something that was said in that report that said, well, the commercial world is learning how to do cloud, and we can learn from that. And so I think to that extent, you're right. Traditionally, government agencies, the federal government and others have tended to be more siloed, and this is a little harder to implement.
Right.
But it's out there in the ethos, and out there in the universe of thinking about modern ways of work.
Yep. And it's changing, right? That we all got thrust into it 3 years ago, right? Everybody did.
Absolutely.
But now we're learning how to deal with living in an environment that we couldn't have done 20 years ago, right? COVID happened 20 years ago. We couldn't have done what we did, but we've proven that hybrid does work. And now we're even having arguments between Elon Musk and Shark Tank, right? So about how the stuff works, or whether it doesn't, or whether it should be, or whether it shouldn't. But at the end of the day, we are in a hybrid environment now, just by nature. Now we're still dealing with human beings. Sometimes we're in this environment where we're virtual, but we're still two human beings talking and a bunch of other human beings listening and then interacting. In a few minutes, you get to interact. If you have any questions, by the way, pop them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll do that, because there's a lot here. There's a lot of philosophical components too. So tell us about this, what you see in the work environment.
Well, boy, you pretty much covered my slide there, Dave.
There you go.
Which is perfect. But I'll mention a couple of things. First of all, yes, you're right. We're all thrown into this. Back in 2020, I'm familiar with a government agency that had to go out and find 5,000 laptops in 30 days or less. And boy,
how about that?
The IT procurement people were not happy.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of people.
Yeah, and the least happy were the end user support people who had to configure those 5,000 laptops. Yeah. But a couple of things here. This is the new reality. I firmly believe that in-person contact is absolutely essential to working the best as human beings, because for thousands or tens of thousands of years, we've learned to communicate and work together in person. And it's in less than a generation that we're trying to figure out how to do it remotely and with a computer in between us. So it takes some intentionality to develop those digital communication skills. And even for me, I'm trying to keep my eye on the camera here while looking at my notes over there. And if we were
doing great, man, it's working.
Well, thank you. If we were in person, I'd have my notes right in front of me, and I could look at you and look at my notes, and we could just have a conversation. But humor, empathy, and compassion still matter, and above all, trust matters. And trust is really important in all environments.
It never changes. And the human interactive, and we talk a lot about AI. You guys even did a briefing about AI. Several different folks have done briefings on that. But the idea is, at the end of the day, we're human beings. We desire to interact with people, and we desire to develop trust and be able to help each other and deliver for each other. It's just the way that it works. And the hybrid environment doesn't change that. It just changes sometimes how it's done, right?
Yes, it just changes the tools and the way we work, and sometimes the timing, but we're still doing the same work. We're still working with the same people, and carrying out the same mission.
Now this one to me is, I need to get my head around what you mean by hybrid processes. What does that mean?
Well, I'll get a little technical here for people, and then I'll try and boil it up a little bit. But the common example here I like to talk about is in application development. And we used to do our software development in a methodology called waterfall. And that was where we'd sit in conference rooms for several weeks and come up with a 150-page document, or maybe bigger, 3-4 inch ring binders, and said, here's everything we want the system to do. And then we'd give that all the developers and go away, and the developers would come back in 6 months with with some big thing that they built that they think matched the 4-inch ring binders,
Yep.
and we'd test it and figure out why it's wrong, and then we'd fix it, and we'd fix it and deploy it. And that was the waterfall method. In a more recent emerging practice, not even emerging, it's pretty standard now these days, called Agile. And instead of 150 pages of requirements, you prefer, when you're a methodologically pure agile process, you're doing your requirements as you go, and you're doing it in these sprints of every couple of weeks. Okay, what do we have to build now? This in the next 2 weeks, and the next 2 weeks, and so on and so forth. But in reality, neither of those are perfect in the real world, and especially in contract space. In contract space, you have to know pretty much what you want done before you award the contract. So there's a waterfall element there, that the requirements need to be somewhat well refined before you award a development contract. So in that sense, that's very waterfall. But
And
very
so
often, very often though, once you get to that point and you start development, then you do the rest of it in agile methods, in 2-week sprints. Design, build, test, something continuously delivered every couple of weeks.
And that's something that both GSA 18F and USDS, the CIO Council, and the folks that have been working on that, bringing those pieces together and helping on that as well, at least as a concept. Having your baseline, getting your release out as quickly as possible, and then using the sprints. Love the model. So
yeah, and as a practical matter, sometimes you actually do both. You have a waterfall, like you'll award a contract to say, well, let's go do a requirement study, and that becomes a project by itself, and then that project ends, and now in waterfall fashion, you've got all those requirements, and then you start the next project, the development project. And
I think it was Tony Scott that said this one day, that you're getting moving because you can't steer the parked car, but as soon as you're moving, you can start to see what kind of works and what doesn't. So that was really good.
Yep.
So we are going to be talking about agency challenges. And speaking of agency challenges, what is yours? And if you're talking about hybrid, what are your challenges in the world? Is it technology, information, organization, roles, work environment? New one for everybody, the process, new one for me anyway, hybrid processes, or something else. You can let us know, and we'll keep that cooking. Here's what we do know, though, right, Doug? There's a whole bunch of folks that have already presented their agency challenges. Tell us what they are.
Sure. Sorry, I've got the poll on top of my screen here.
Yeah, it winds up doing that. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. There we go. All right. So in your agency, you are charged to fulfill a mission, which is to, as we have said, deliver public value, to do it with excellence and respond faster and faster to constituent needs. You have to follow the laws, the regulations, the policies.
No, the government doesn't have to do any of that.
Yeah, well, usually, yeah. I mean, at least you have to say you're doing it. Check the box. No,
just kidding, everybody.
Just kidding. Yeah, absolutely. And then, apart from laws and regulations, of course, you've got your standards, your agency standards, your CIO, CIO.gov standards and guidelines, GSA guidelines, all that stuff.
NIST, all of it.
Yep. The formal standards like NIST or FedRAMP.
Yep. There's another one.
Yeah. So while you're doing all this, things are changing in the political and social and economic environment that may have an impact on either the service you have to deliver or how you deliver it. And how you deliver it sometimes mean you've got to adopt a new technology that can help you go faster and farther and cheaper. And while you're all doing this, you've already got sunk investment in the old technology or the stuff that you built just last week. So you got to manage that and maximize the benefits of those investments. And none of this can be done without people. You've got to develop and sustain the IT workforce and keep upskilling them as the technologies change.
Yeah.
And while you're doing all this, counter cyber threats. And while you're doing all this, do it on time and on a sometimes very tight
I don't
budget.
understand what the problem is. I just don't get it. I mean, everything
So-
should run smooth. These agencies, there's a, listen, that's
Yeah,
what
so-
we're all dealing with. We do,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a couple more seconds for the poll, but we do have a question from Vikas. And this goes back to one of the questions. I'm sorry, Vikas, I meant to ask this earlier, but has to do with the ownership. How is ownership of work impacted by this new model when you're starting to flatten it out a little bit, and there can be some tensions, believe it or not, every once in a while between the IT folks and the folks that have the business processes needs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how does that work? How's ownership of work impacted in this model?
Well, I'm going to answer that a little bit indirectly by saying that I believe the best practice is that the solution that's used to fulfill the HR mission or the constituent benefits mission, whatever it is, needs to be owned by a person in the agency that's not a technology person.
Right.
Own that solution. In Agile terms, we call that the product owner.
Mm-hmm.
And in technology, and in the technology group, you own the technology. So really, and then you work together, and you have, and that's pretty much the definition of collaborative and flat organizations. Yes, somebody's got the product owner, somebody else is the owner of the network, somebody else is owning the compute and the cloud solution and all that. So you have things that you own, but the owners, the work is jointly owned.
And
I hope that makes sense.
With the prime owner being the one that's responsible for the deliverable, for the mission deliverable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the idea?
Yeah, the product owner is ultimately responsible for getting it done.
So hopefully that helps a little bit. Because,
getting it done through others. Yeah.
And the collaboration is there's a huge human issue there, right? With the ability to be able to provide your piece of the ownership or what you must own in order for the whole system to work.
Yeah, and by nature, people have competing priorities and competing preferences and opinions. But as long as you stay focused on the imperative, which is to deliver that value efficiently and quickly, if all of your conversations come back to this imperative or whatever the agency's imperatives are, this is that helps solve those conflicting priorities.
And it never changes because the pressure for delivering the public value, right? It never changes. And because of this back here, I'll just go back here. All these things, I don't understand why you can't do it all on time and on budget. Everybody should be able to do it. It's easy. It's in a book somewhere.
And for those of you who are doing it, which I'm sure is most of you, well done. Because I know it's not easy.
There's always challenges, right? And one of the challenges is the actual part of building this to be a dynamic agency and working in a little bit of a different way. Take us through what you're talking about here, because I think this is really an interesting play.
Yeah, it's a concept called the dynamic organization, and that's so that you can be internally adaptive while you're responding to the external environment, the new demands for services or the budget cuts or whatever it may be, where you still got to do the same mission with less money, or you've got to do it for more people or a different set of people. Whatever the case may be, there are things in your external environment that are changing all the time. So this, in order to respond to that effectively, you need to be somewhat adaptive on the inside. And it is a theoretical ideal, this thing called the dynamic organization. It's a subject for continuous learning because it's aspirational. It's rarely fully achieved, but the lessons that you learn as you go along the way are instructional for everyone. And it's achieved by a learning organization that's disciplined and transparent and connected. And that's not technologically connected. That means that product owner and that technology owner are connected and see eye to eye on the mission and the purpose.
Love it. And we mentioned the word adaptive that you made before. So let's take it to what the architecture has to be.
Yeah, so this is a lot of words here, and this is kind of my manifesto of adaptive enterprise architecture and what I mean by that. And really, very, very simply, I'll try and boil this down. In a dynamic organization, like I said, you've got to be adaptive on the inside, both in your people and your technology, and swappable technology. That means designing for the future, where maybe I've got a solution plugged in here that's the state of the art changes every couple of years in a lot of cases. I want to unplug that one and plug another one in. In the hybrid space, so you don't have to do all this yourself. That is, the hybrid technology and hybrid enterprise architectures is not necessarily a DIY exercise. There are technologies that are innately built for being adaptive, whether it's cloud technologies, the ability to elastic computing, ability to scale up and scale down, or completely destroy environments and turn them back on tomorrow.
That's incredible, by the way. Just the ability to do that and have it to watch what's happened in the cloud environment, especially to pull the scalability and the, like you say, the elasticity of it.
Yeah, and using those things also has a tremendous cost saving potential too, because you turn things off when you're not using them. A lot of times you're getting paid by the click or the CPU minute.
Yep.
Turn it off. Don't have it running if you're not using it.
So now there's the other side of it is, hey, sometimes you're just never going to get away. Like in this instance with the ERP, you're never going to get away from some of these things, right? Where it's never a good idea to even move away from it.
Yeah, the subtext on this slide is, I've been saying hybrid, but the subtext is one size doesn't fit all. And the further subtext is, I'm always confident and I'm occasionally wrong. So examples of when something is better than the hybrid is just your traditional ERP system. It typically embodies best business practices. Somebody else has already figured out how to make the technology work to do all the standard things, the accounts payable, accounts receivable, all the things you're doing. You're paying your people, you're cutting invoices, whatever you're doing. These things have fairly standard business practices according to the accounting principles and all that sort of stuff. And if it's in supply chain, still there's supply chain best business practices that are embedded in the software, and they support them end to end. They're integrated by design. They're configurable, and don't go down the rabbit hole of trying to customize. Rely on configuration. Big difference between customization and configuration. That's why ERP implementations mean that for a lot of CIOs, CIO stands for career is over, because they fall into the customization trap rather than
and sometimes you can't get there. It's interesting because years ago I worked with the CIO Council on mainframe modernization initiatives and things like that. We still have mainframes today. Sometimes they're going to stay in the mainframe. In fact, we get into your case study. I got a real quick one with NASA. There's one that's never going to change from a mainframe because it's got one job. It's got one active unit in it left, and it's the Voyager spacecraft that's still communicating with us. And we're like, we're not rebuilding anything for that. And that's exactly what they did. So that's my case study. Best practice: if you have Voyager spacecraft on your mainframe, that stays.
Yeah,
but the rest of the stuff can change.
Exactly.
Tell us about how this infrastructure is a journey.
Yeah, exactly. I'm familiar with another instance. Exactly, a very similar thing. The mainframe is running just because it handles the interagency messaging for law enforcement and some of those types of agencies. And right now there's no direct replacement for it. So the mainframe keeps running just for that.
And it works.
Yep. All right, so there's a couple of case studies here. These are all real life experience from my real life experience. And here's how one organization went from traditional everything, all applications and data were housed, self-hosted and hosted on premises. That's where they started. And the green box there now is, wait a second, that's pretty risky. And there's ways to make that a little safer. So they moved to a private cloud. And the distinction between private cloud and public cloud, maybe that's a topic for another day, but they got it out of the server room down the hall. And as the applications evolved, there were some performance issues. And you know what? If we move just some of this data to a particular cloud solution, I won't name the vendor, but they had a great solution for it. We moved some of our data over to the public cloud and use that technology. Things will run faster. And my gosh, they did. But eventually, and this is almost the last step on this journey, is to move everything into the public cloud. And the phase that's not mentioned here is after you lift and shift and do an efficient move from on-premises or private cloud into the public cloud, sometimes you do that, you want to get it done fast and you don't necessarily optimize. So phase 5 is once it's over there, start exploiting those native cloud technologies that are built for the cloud.
Yep.
You don't want
But
to
I
take,
love you. I like the fact that you don't have to just boom, all of a sudden everything works in the cloud. It's very rare that that actually works right. Big bang usually means big bust, right? So
usually, yeah.
So I like that the iterative steps, and then if you're looking at the applications, I like how you have this laid out as well. So you have your components here.
So the previous slide was about a journey to the cloud using hybridization along the way, mostly from a infrastructure point of view. But the applications themselves can be hybridized as well. And this center bubble could be your ERP. In this particular case, it was a custom version of an ERP that most of the business activity took place in that core solution. But we bolted on all kinds of other things, financials that are a SaaS solution. Customer inquiries come from customer-facing websites that are custom. There's a vendor integration hub for supply chain, and that uses a third-party service entirely. Customer messaging uses a combination of SaaS solutions for email and another SaaS solution for SMS. At the bottom line, at the end of the day, or any other metaphors you want to think of, the best practice is you can do all this, and the stakeholders see a single solution, and while IT manages this complexity, and it does get complex.
It does,
but it's getting better and better, especially with these things that are built for integration, built for hybrid.
And we see this happen in the Govy space too, right? So there's a lot of change that folks are realizing once they hit that wall. They're saying this doesn't belong in the cloud, so we got to figure out a way to pull these together. And that changes what the dynamic looks like, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and some of the advantages of that hybrid application architecture is that if you have one function that's not working really well, like say you don't like that SMS service, you unplug it and you plug in a different one. You don't have to throw away the whole ERP.
Right.
Yep. And spend another $50 million or whatever you're going to spend.
So these roles that you're talking about here, the CIO roles, who is the chief architect for an enterprise, or is there one anymore?
So that's a great question. And this is the model you see here is a best practice that's endured, and it works still in a lot of situations, a lot of scenarios. But this particular agency in this example didn't want this. They didn't want that top-down, expert-centric enterprise architecture function. So what's the alternative? The alternative is on the next slide. And I mentioned this several slides and feels like hours ago about evolving into a community of practice. And this particular government entity has decided that enterprise architecture is going to be a community of practice. Now the CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and the Assistant Chief Information Officer for applications are there and providing guidance and guardrails, but the application owners, the technology managers are doing the work in as it says, a community of practice, and there is no person called enterprise architect.
So when we think about this, because this goes to what Vikas was asking about, hey, who has ownership? Somebody's butt's on the line for the deliverables, though. Still, right?
Yeah. Well, and in this case, in this case, it really is the CIO,
right?
But his direct reports are CTO, CIO, and they're there to keep it on track. Yep. They're not there to tell you how or even what. They're more there to tell you why.
Yep.
Why and when.
Yep. And that gets us to what next? And
what's next?
Take us out for the response.
Sure.
What we can do.
And at the risk of repeating myself, I think I've said before that hybridization of everything is an environmental force. It's there in the technology landscape. It's hard to find things that aren't built for hybrid anymore, and there's lots of compelling business reasons, or I keep saying business, but you know what I mean. The agency
Yeah.
imperatives.
Well, business practice within the agency for sure.
Yes, yeah. That make it a force to be reckoned with. But so let's recognize it and let's harness it and make it an opportunity to fulfill that mission.
And we're seeing it unfold right now. We have a whole lot of activity with this AI stuff and trying to figure out where the pitfalls are.
Mm-hmm.
And Vikas is saying natural evolution. There's truth to that too, buddy.
There you go. Yep. And now I'm going to go out on a limb, and this is my last slide here, really. What's ahead? I'm going to go out on a limb and predict something that I don't think is too outrageous, because you see what AI is doing with ChatGPT and everything else. I think in the not too distant future, it's going to be possible to model everything about the organization, from its mission and objectives to its budget, to its workforce, and what those stakeholders need, what the public needs, what the product owners want in their solutions. All those capabilities and costs can be modeled, and the AI-based tool is going to be a contributing member of that community of practice.
And there's no doubt about it.
That's what I
we
think.
We are going to ask what's next for you, and if you would like to continue the conversation in any aspect of a hybrid issue within your agency, or if you have something else that you'd like to discuss, even if it's cloud-based or something like that you'd like to talk to Doug about, we'd love to. I know Doug will be glad to chat with you guys. As I mentioned earlier, there is no obligation to buy from any vendor on this, including Divine. However, if you would like to, guess what? You can, because they're 8A. They have a GSA contract. They have partners with HubZone, woman-owned, service disabled. If you need them and you happen to be VA, we know the VA requires that as well. So you can certainly help. You can certainly continue the conversation, and they have ways to be able to, as the contracting elders would say, get to you. Mm-hmm. So there you go. What you will get is you'll get a recap email ended today, early tomorrow. It'll have the presentation link to the video. If you'd like continuing education certification, let me know. We'll be able to get that to you as well. And a one-on-one meeting with Doug or Matt. Matt, you're going to be handling that, I do believe, correcto?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Look forward to hearing from you guys.
Start with Matt, and Matt knows where to find me.
That's right. He certainly does. And
he sure does.
Certainly did. We appreciate your participation there. Great job. If you want to reach out to Jeff or Matt directly, there is their direct information, not hiding from anybody.
Jeff?
They love to have that as part of the conversation. Got a couple
Dave,
folks.
That would be Doug.
That would be Doug what? Hiding from everybody? Oh, no. Doug. How did that happen? We'll fix that. Don't send it to Jeff. That'll be Doug. I don't know how that happened.
You can send it to Jeff. He's right next to him.
That's right. He's right next to him. If you send it to Jeff, that's fine, but that's not Jeff. That is Doug, actually.
Yeah, that's my ugly mug there. And my phone number. Yeah.
That's right. So we'll get that fixed out, make sure that gets adjusted so that it gets done right every once in a while. You got issues. So there you go. Great job, man. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the information on the processes too. Great job, Doug.
All right. Thanks very much.
Doug. Appreciate everybody joining. Thank you.
Jeff's here. He says, thanks. We're happy to help.
Thank you, Vikas. Great questions.
Yeah, great questions. Anybody else has anything else, let us know. We're glad to do it. Get rid of that poll for everybody. Any parting comments from you, Doug, before we let everybody out of here?
Just very briefly, what I might have said at the very beginning was that this webinar is necessarily about a specific product or technology or any of those things. It's about a way of thinking and a way of being. It's becoming the hybrid person and really being successful, not only for your career, but for your agency and the public you're serving.
Awesome, man. Couldn't have said it better. Appreciate it. Great job. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great, what's Monday's Memorial Day, right?
It is.
It is Memorial Day. So have a great extended weekend, and we will see you on the other side.